I decided to do it in this live format because I was trying to upload. I already recorded this video. I tried to upload it to video. It wouldn't fucking work. So that's why we're now doing it in this live format here, where I can just. It goes straight up to YouTube. I don't have to, deal with the crap. So um, I'm going to be going through all my week 15 picks here, and you guys can let me know if you have any questions about any of these teams. Definitely go down in the comments and ask. I'll answer any questions you guys might have. Um, so getting into this Thursday night game between the Rams and the 49ers, I like this matchup for the Los Angeles Rams for a number of reasons. Number one, they're actually playing for a playoff spot in this. That they have real implications, and I really do believe the momentum is on the side of the Los Angeles Rams in this matchup. When you think about it, the 49ers, they've just had such a fucking weird year with all the injuries and all that. You have obviously McCaffrey out. Debo is kind of washed. You're not going to have Trent Williams in this game. So I just think the Rams have more to play for. They're more healthy. They have more momentum on their side, especially after, beating the Bills in that big shootout. So I could see you maybe using that actually as an argument in favor of the Niners in this one, because you could say, hey, the Rams, they might be really physically spent after that matchup between them and the Bills. But like I said, I don't really trust the Niners with this season that they've had. They've been so wildly inconsistent. They've had so many injuries. Their players are not really playing up to the form we've expected them to come to. So I'm rolling with the LA Rams in that one. I think it's going to be a really fun matchup between McVay and Shanahan. It always is fun when those two guys meet up. So next up we have the Cowboys at Carolina. So I think this is the first time that the Carolina Panthers have been favored. I think it's like 33 games I saw the Carolina Panthers. It's been since they've been favored in a matchup. So to me, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like, I get it. Bryce Young has played better. He's definitely looked better since coming off of his benching, but it's still the Carolina Panthers. Like, to me, it's still one of the worst teams in the NFL. When you look at the Dallas Cowboys, I have a laundry list of issues with the Dallas Cowboys. I have a lot of problems with the Cowboys, but they're still a better overall roster than the Carolina Panthers. And so I'm just looking at the comments here, real funny. But when we look at the Carolina Panthers, this is still a team they're competing for the number one overall pick. I get it. The Dallas Cowboys, I mean, Dak Prescott's gone, but this offense has been capable with Cooper Rush in there. Cooper Rush is no slouch. I think he is one of the best backups in the NFL right now. And the Cowboys have been in games with Cooper Rush. They beat the Washington Commanders with Cooper Rush. I get it. They beat the Giants on Thanksgiving. The Giants suck. We all know the Giants are a bottom feeder team right now, but so are the Carolina Panthers. So it really does shock me right now that the Cowboys are 3-point underdogs in this game. I get it. Bryce Young is playing better, but I don't really care. I'm going with the Dallas Cowboys in this one. So next up, we've got the Chiefs at Browns. So every single game this year the Chiefs have played, I've picked on the side of the Chiefs. I don't know how you can pick against the Chiefs. They've only lost one game this year, and that was against I think going to be the reigning MVP, Josh Allen. So them going, I get it. Jameis has breathed a new life into the Browns offense. Obviously, you can't really be much worse than Deshaun Watson, but the Browns, I don't know. I mean, Jameis gives you the same thing. He's going to give you the passing game, but he also is going to give you just those boneheaded, reckless turnovers time after time in the crucial moments, especially against a team like the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, hell, Jameis Winston threw an interception against a fucking defensive lineman against my Steelers. Like, Keanu Benton is never going to get another interception in his life. His one pick, of course, is from Jameis. So it honestly surprises me that the Chiefs are only 4.5-point favorites. I thought they'd actually be higher, favored by more in this one, just looking at the Browns and how much of a fucking train wreck they really are right now. So our next matchup is the Miami Dolphins and the Houston Texans. I'm actually going to be a bit of a contrarian on this one, and I'm going to take the Miami Dolphins. For a couple reasons. I have not loved the Houston Texans this year. I think they really have disappointed me. The Houston Texans were a team that I thought could be fighting for the number one overall seed. And when you just look at how they've played, they've had some really sloppy performances, particularly their offense. You know, you can talk about your sophomore slump with CJ. Also, the offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick, really having a down year. Like, I don't know what the fuck is going on with the Houston Texans. I bought into all the hype. How the fuck could you not buy into the hype after what they did last season? But they have not looked very good or dominant or anything. So I might look like an idiot here because I have called the Dolphins the Cowboys of the AFC. I have bashed on the Dolphins in the past for struggling in these big games, especially in this game, which has major playoff implications. So I might look like an idiot here picking with the Dolphins, but I don't know really how you can trust the Houston Texans, bro. The Texans have really, really just been a letdown this season as a whole. I get it, they're 8-5, but they've had a very, very easy schedule. Look at their division is kind of a train wreck. So give me the Dolphins in a big one. Like I said, I could look like an idiot picking with them in a big game, but I don't trust Houston a whole lot. And the Dolphins have been red hot since Tua's come back, especially that resilient overtime win last week against the New York Jets. So next up, Bengals at Titans, not a particularly... Lil Watt, I will get to the Bills-Lions game. Just going down the list right now. But Bengals-Titans, not a particularly interesting game. The only real storyline in this one right now is the fact that you have, the Titans' new head coach is going to be playing his old team. He was Burrow's longtime play caller in Cincinnati. The year they got to the Super Bowl, that was the Titans' offensive coordinator, was Callahan. But we know the Bengals, they're one of the most lethal offenses in the NFL right now, and I get it, Tennessee has an okay defense, but their offense is so fucking abysmal. They cannot keep up in a shootout with the high-powered offense that is Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. So, I don't know what to do with the Bengals. I feel like they've really dug themselves in too deep of a hole. Even if they win out, let's say the Bengals win out, which I don't even think you can say is a given, but even if they do win out, they're 9-8. Do you think 9-8 is good enough to get a wild card spot in the AFC? Because I certainly don't. So I don't know what the answer is for the Bengals going forward. That's a video for another time. They should beat this Titans team. Next up, we have Commanders at Saints. I'm honestly kind of surprised here that the Commanders are 7.5-point favorites with how sloppy this Commanders team has played. Jane Daniels, the first 2 months of the year, Jane Daniels looked incredible. But now, I just think the kid's beat up. They ask him to play a very physical style of football. They ask him to basically carry the offense. And he's just, his frame isn't really built for that over the course of an NFL season. So they definitely got to build up that offensive line. I'm still going to take the Commanders in this one overall, but it does kind of shock me. I get it. The Saints are a fucking train wreck. We get that, but 7.5 is, I think, a lot for a struggling Commanders team. And a big thing that's also outside of Jane Daniels that has worried me about the Commanders, their defense is not good. Like, their defense is just flat out bad. And, I feel like earlier in the year, Dan Quinn was kind of able to cover that up. Dan Quinn. He's been able to kind of get more out of his players, but I think as the year's gone on, as more film is out there, as they played more teams, they're kind of more easy to expose. So I'm going with the Commanders. I don't love it. I still don't think it's a given the Commanders are going to be a playoff team this year, but the Saints, they are the Saints. So we got to go with Washington in that one. Next up, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one, the Jets and the Jags. That's an absolute fucking toilet bowl of a game right there. I guess I'll take the Jets. If you're a longtime listener of this channel, you know that I have a laundry list of gripes with the New York Jets. I don't really want to waste a whole lot of time on them. But the Jags, at the end of the day, they're rolling out there with Mac Jones at quarterback. Mac Jones right now is just a fledgling dumpster fire right now. Mac Jones, 2 touchdowns to 5 interceptions in his couple games he's played. So I get it. The Jets should win this one, but it's the Jets. Nothing would surprise me if the Jets lost this one. Would you really be that shocked? I really wouldn't. Next up, this is an interesting one just because of how massive the spread is. And that is the Baltimore Ravens going to New York to play the Giants. The Baltimore Ravens are 16-point favorites in an NFL game. That is like unheard of. Like I know we had a bigger spread, not a bigger, but we had a big spread earlier in the year between Jacksonville and Detroit was favored by 14, but 16. Baltimore has not been a team this year that has been that dominant to, I think, warrant a 16-point line. To me, that is just fucking crazy to put an NFL team to win by that many points, especially when how like offensively inconsistent the Baltimore Ravens have been this season. We talked about it prior weeks. When they use Derrick Henry, when they give him 20-plus rushes, they're undefeated in those games. And all their losses, they gave Derrick Henry like 14 and under carries. So it's a very clear blueprint how the Baltimore Ravens win their games. Feed Derrick Henry the fucking football. It's not rocket science. And this is why like I will die on the hill that I don't think Todd Monken is a very good or even competent level coordinator. Because like it's clear, it's written there in black and white. We know how the Ravens win football games. Feed Derrick Henry the football. It's not hard. If I was the coordinator for the Ravens, I could not give Derrick Henry the fucking football enough. But I don't know. Harbaugh and Todd Monken seem to think that they're geniuses. I really don't understand why they just don't use them more. Like I said, every time they give Derrick Henry the ball over 20 times, they're undefeated in those games. I don't get it. So, yeah, the Ravens should win this one, but I think 16 points is a lot for a team that's been so offensively inconsistent. Their defense is clearly not the same as it was last year. So, give me Baltimore, but I do not understand that spread whatsoever. Next up, we have the Battle of Pennsylvania. My Steelers going over to Philly to play the Eagles. This is the first time this year where I'm actually going to pick against my Steelers. I hate to do it. Obviously, I want my Steelers to win, but I don't have a whole lot of confidence in this one against the Philadelphia Eagles. I just think from a talent perspective, the Eagles are so loaded. And I think really the big thing, I think they're on a 7-game win streak right now. The big key to that is their defense has come along. You know, a big reason why the Eagles fell apart last year is because their secondary was fucking burnt toast. James Bradberry and Darius Slay, they weren't any good. Especially, like, Darius Slay's good now as, like, their third option corner. Last year, they had him as their top corner, and James Bradberry, who wasn't even a fucking NFL player, they had them down the stretch. They were getting exposed. Vic Fangio has come in here and completely cleaned up this defensive unit. You have the 2 stud rookies. Quinyon Mitchell, I think, is playing legitimately at a Pro Bowl level. Cooper DeJean has been incredible as well. To go with their defensive line, I mean, that has been the key. The Philadelphia Eagles have invested so much high-end draft capital in that defensive line, bringing in those Georgia boys. Jalen Carter has been on a fucking tear these past couple weeks. And the offense, like, I get it. There's rumblings about Jalen and A.J. Brown not getting along, but I just think that's par for the course. You know, another day, another NFL wide receiver crying about not getting enough touches. Doesn't really concern me a whole lot. You know, this is nothing new with receivers. And my biggest worry, though, for the Steelers, like I just went through it, I think their defense is really good. Even though they have their woes, their whatever on offense, there's still a lot of talent in that unit. My biggest problem for the Steelers going into this game is there's no George Pickens. George Pickens is not playing this game. George Pickens has been the security blanket for Russell Wilson. I think outside of Russ, Pickens is by far the most crucial piece to the Steelers offense, you know, because Russell Wilson's go-to play is throwing up those 50-50 moon balls to George Pickens, the 50-50 balls. If you watched last week against the Cleveland Browns when Pickens was out, he was trying to do that with the other receivers. The other receivers are not fucking George Pickens. They're not capable of doing that, particularly a guy like Calvin Austin, who's a little guy. He's a speedster. He was trying to throw up these 50-50 jump balls to Calvin Austin. It's like, that's not how Calvin Austin plays. He's a little speedster. So Pickens being out really does worry me. Like, we were able to get over the Browns because the Browns are the Browns. But when we play a team like the Eagles without such a crucial, important player like George Pickens, that really, really worries me. So, yeah, first time this year where I'm picking against my Steelers. I hate to do it, but I have to be unbiased when I do these picks. And the absence of George Pickens, I think, is really, really going to hurt the Steelers. Moving on, though. We have the Colts at Broncos. This is honestly kind of like a mini playoff game in a way. I see Norman Paul. Why are the Cleveland Browns always terrible? It's clear why the Cleveland Browns are always terrible. And this is something I've talked about with all the perpetual bad teams, the Raiders, the Jets, the Browns. Ownership. Ownership. That is why the Cleveland Browns always suck, is because their owner does not know what the fuck he's doing. He's a meddling owner. He always gets involved. They had a sustainable franchise quarterback in Baker Mayfield, but their owner saw this shiny new toy over here in Deshaun Watson, threw Baker out. I mean, this is something the Jets always do. They're always bouncing around coaches and quarterbacks. The Raiders are the same thing. It's no different with the Cleveland Browns. See, that's why the Browns are always terrible. It's because their owner doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, and he's always meddling within the team. That is the key. It's not just football. That's sports in general, is typically when teams are, over a long period of time, sustainably bad, it's from bad ownership. The Bears are another team you could throw in there for sure. But getting back to the Colts-Broncos game, this honestly is kind of like a mini playoff game when you look at the implications. I saw earlier that the Colts, if the Colts lose this game, they have about a 10% chance of getting the playoffs. If they win, they have about a 68% chance. So this is a do-or-die must-win game for the Indianapolis Colts. And the Broncos, it's not necessarily a must-win game for the Broncos, but obviously they want to cement on their wild card spot. They got a lot of teams scratching at their heels in that AFC wild card spot. So they ain't going to roll over for the Colts here. I think the Colts have more to play for. But it's hard to pick in the side of the Colts with how wildly up and down, wildly inconsistent Anthony Richardson has been. You know, Anthony Richardson has been a very highly talked about player on this channel this whole season because he's so wildly inconsistent. And in a big game, how could you realistically put any faith in Anthony Richardson? He's a guy that I rooted for. I thought he was going to work out in the NFL. And he's not terrible, at least since he's come back to be the starter. But I do not trust him, especially against a team coached by Sean Payton. And I'm not some big Sean Payton fanboy, but he's really, really done an impressive job this year with the Denver Broncos. So I got to pick the Broncos in here. I just don't trust the Colts. Next up, so someone asked about this game earlier. Bills-Lions. This is a Super Bowl preview, potentially. I really hope that this is the Super Bowl matchup we get. This could potentially be it. I don't know. I had a lot of gripes with the NFL schedule this year. I don't know who the fuck makes the NFL schedule. Why the hell is this game not in a primetime spot? You know, either a Sunday night, Monday night, or Thursday night. This should be a primetime game with like 20 million people watching. Why the fuck is this on some random afternoon game on Sunday? I don't understand that at all. But Bills-Lions, definitely a big matchup here. I have to roll with the Detroit Lions for one reason, and that is because I don't like how the Bills' offense has regressed into how they used to play. Earlier in the season, when they were dominating teams, they were playing a much more balanced style of football. They were running the ball a lot more. James Cook, they were opening up the passing game, not just reliant on one guy like Stephon Diggs in years earlier. That's not how they've played the past couple weeks, especially last week against the LA Rams. You can't ask Josh Allen to do everything. Like, I feel like earlier in the year, they were very balanced, clean, efficient offense, whereas now, it's like, hey, Josh, go get your Superman cape, put it on, and fucking carry us. That's not a sustainable way to win football games, especially against a team like the Detroit Lions, who are just stacked. I really think the Lions, you can argue, from a player-to-player perspective, is the best roster in the National Football League right now. So I like the Bills a lot. Josh Allen is 100% the MVP this year, but I don't like that offensive regression where they've really just relied a lot on Josh to carry them. They're getting away from that run game. I don't like to see that. I really don't like to see that. So I'm going with the Lions here. Next up, we have the Buccaneers at Chargers. Pretty big one for the Bucs if they want to cement their hold over the NFC South. I'm actually going to go with the upset here. I actually do have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beating the LA Chargers, I think for really one particular reason, because we know the Chargers, we know their MO, we know why the Chargers, or we know how the Chargers have been good this year, and that is they dominate the line of scrimmage. Well, when I look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, there are no slouches on the defensive and offensive line. They have an incredible defensive line spearheaded by Vita Vea, and then their offensive line, not incredible, but it's not terrible either. Like, it's mid of the pack. So the Chargers do a really good job against teams that have shitty defensive lines and shitty offensive lines. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are not that. The Bucs are playing really good football right now. They've been on a hot streak the past couple weeks, especially, of course, with Mike Evans being back. So this season reminds me a lot of last year for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When you think about it, the Bucs were like, I don't know, what was their record? 3-6 at the midway point through last year. Then they went on to play their best football at the end of the year, and they won the division. They won a playoff game against the Eagles. That reminds me a lot of what's going to happen this year. The Buccaneers, with Atlanta completely crumbling, and trust me, we're going to get into why Atlanta has fallen apart, because that is really one of the most fascinating stories, I think, right now. Because they had at least a 3 or 4 game lead on that division over Tampa, especially after the big injuries to Tampa. I'm going with Tampa in this one. I really do think that Baker, he's been playing really good, and I just think it's a really good matchup for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Next up, we have the Patriots at Cardinals. The Cardinals. I mean, if you've listened to me this whole year, you know my thoughts on the Cardinals. They're the most inconsistent team in the entire NFL. I really believe that, because it wasn't that long ago the Arizona Cardinals were 6-4, sitting comfortably atop the NFC West division. Now they're 6-7, so they've lost their 3 last games, and it might have something to do with the new Call of Duty coming out, maybe. I definitely am a big Kyler guy. I've made that clear on the channel. I am a big supporter and fan of Kyler Murray, but there's something to be said when Call of Duty comes out. So the Cardinals should win this game, 100%. The Arizona Cardinals should beat the Patriots in this one. I wouldn't put money on it, though. Like, how could you, with how up and down they've been? Their defense has actually been pretty good this year. Like, look into how many points the Cardinals have held certain teams to. Like, it really has been impressive. I think Gannon has really figured out that side of the ball. It's the offense, and that all stems from Kyler. So, I'm a big Kyler fan, but I'm willing to admit he's wildly inconsistent. So, they should beat New England, but they should have won a hell of a lot of other games this year already as well. So, it's like, I wouldn't put money on it, but I'm picking the Cardinals. Next up, we got the Packers going to Seattle, play the Seahawks. So, the thing that surprised me about this game is the fact that Green Bay is only favored by 2.5. I thought they would be a much bigger favorite in this one, because Geno Smith in almost every big game since he's taken over as the starter in Seattle has completely crumbled. Geno Smith had one good game in like a big game this year against the Niners earlier this year, and that was against an imploding 49ers team. It's not like the Niners were at their peak a couple weeks ago when he beat them. But I gave him credit for it, because it was the first time he beat the Niners as the Seahawks starter. But I have to go with Green Bay here, and I get it, it's in Seattle, but it really did surprise me that they're only 2.5 point favorites. Like, I could see Green Bay kind of running away with this one with how Geno has played in the big games and how dynamic that Green Bay offense really has. I get it. Seattle's defense is really coming along. Mike McDonald has worked wonders, especially over the past couple weeks. Seattle's defense has looked really, really good, but they haven't had the test quite like Green Bay. I mean, Green Bay, they have basically like everything you'd want on offense. They got young receivers, young tight end, a good line. They have that power running element from Josh Jacobs, and spearheaded by one of the most talented guys in Jordan Love. So I get it. If you took Seattle, I could see the argument for that as well, but I just think they out-talent Seattle. And the difference between Jordan Love and Geno Smith, I think, is a pretty wide gap, especially in a game like this that has some pretty big playoff implications. So give me Green Bay. Next up, we go to the Monday slate of games. This is a doubleheader. Both these games are pretty bad. These are not very good games. And we already talked about a couple games here, 4 games. The Battle of PA game, the Colts-Broncos game, the Bills-Lions game, and that Packers-Seahawks game I just talked about. That's 4 games that all could have been primetime games on Monday. So it kind of surprises me that these are the 2 games they picked for Monday night, because Vikings-Bears, the Vikings should just absolutely slaughter the Bears. When you look at how just unbelievably like dominant and consistent the Vikings have been this year, what the hell is Caleb Williams going to do against this defense? I mean, that would scare the shit out of me if I was Caleb Williams. I could see Caleb throwing like 5 picks in this game. So, this really actually surprises me that the Vikings are only 6.5 point favorites. Dom 13, Vikings NFC North champs. I don't know, man. The Lions, I think the Lions are the best roster right now, but Vikings are right there. I mean, it's really coming down to it. But I really do think the Vikings are going to fucking curb stomp the Chicago Bears. I mean, we're going to have to make a separate video. I already kind of did like my final rant on the Bears, but they're well on their way to fucking up yet another highly touted quarterback prospect, whereas the Vikings, they're kind of like on the flip side of that with their quarterback situation. They're kind of like in the good problem. It's like Do we want to extend Sam Darnold or do we want to move on to JJ? My whole thing with that is like, if you let Darnold walk and you keep JJ, let him be the guy next year, there's no guarantee that JJ McCarthy is going to be as good as Sam has been this year. So I get it. You drafted JJ high, but you know Sam Darnold really, really works. You're 11-2 with Sam Darnold. How the fuck can you let him walk out of there? No way. I'd sign him up 3-4 year deal easily. They should crush the Chicago Bears. I mean, like I said, the Bears are a fucking joke right now. The Vikings should absolutely slaughter them. And then our last game, just a bad game between the Falcons and the Raiders. You couldn't pay me to watch that one. It is kind of funny, though. Look at who the Raiders' starting quarterback for this game is. Desmond Ridder. Maybe he's going to have his revenge game on his old team. But I think that kind of tells you everything you need to know about the Raiders, is the simple fact that they're rolling out there with their starting quarterback as Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder. I think that kind of tells you that the Raiders are tanking. They want Shedeur Sanders. Yeah, you are better than Desmond Ridder, exactly. That move just tells me they're fully in on the tank for Shedeur Sanders. I don't blame them for that. But as for this game, if the Falcons blow this one, this is something I wanted to talk specifically about, the Atlanta Falcons. How the fuck has Kirk Cousins not been benched? When you look at Kirk Cousins' last 4 games, he's thrown 0 touchdowns. You and me have thrown as many touchdowns as Kirk Cousins over his last 4 games. You know how many interceptions he's thrown in that period of time? 8. He's thrown, in his last 4 games, 0 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. How the fuck has Kirk Cousins not been benched? You know, it'd be one thing if they didn't have, like, any clear backup. You just drafted a kid 9th overall at the quarterback position, Michael Penix Jr. You know, like, how is Michael Penix not the starter? Like, it literally blows my mind. You had a 3 to 4 game cushion on this division of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you fucking blown it with how terrible Kirk Cousins has played. Like, I get it, you paid him a lot of money. You're trying to fucking make the playoffs. Like, this is just totally unacceptable from Kirk himself, but from the people running this team. What the fuck are we doing? Wow. I can't comprehend why Penix isn't in. And especially if you lose to the Raiders. The Raiders, they're actively tanking. They're playing Ridder. They're trying to get the number 1 overall pick. If you lose to that fucking team and Kirk isn't benched, I think that's a fireable offense for Raheem Morris. I mean, this is embarrassing. This is like career-ending stuff, what's happened with the Falcons over the past couple weeks. So that is it for my Week 15 picks. Appreciate anyone who stopped by here in the live stream. Like I said, I already tried to record this. YouTube was being, silly, not letting me upload, so I had to come here on live and do it. So if you stopped by during the live stream, yes, this will be uploaded later, so you can come back and watch it. But thanks for sticking around during the live stream. Go ahead and leave a